Hello, and welcome to this webinar, operated and sponsored by Real ID. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. The webinar will begin momentarily. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. The webinar will begin momentarily. Real ID is a passionate and committed team. Through entertainment technology, we contribute to our clients' social and professional development. We offer a comprehensive service that responds to new challenges and has established our active international presence. We provide our clients with the right balance between their needs and our platform's optimal performance. We seek precise solutions for the continued use of legacy systems and, where appropriate, development of required applications. Real ID has grown thanks to the port and maritime industry's safety and security needs. Each of our modules are managed by a simulated artificial intelligence called Sole, capable of learning scenarios and finding solutions according to the end user's requirements. Hello, and welcome to this webinar, operated and sponsored by Real ID. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. We will now start the webinar.
Hello, good morning. I hope you can all hear me. I am looking for my fellow panelists here. There is Ms. Sochan, Charmaine, and then Mr. Baskin, Mr. Ali. There we go. And then Mr. Mera as well. There we go. And then lovely. Here we are. Good morning and good afternoon to you all, depending on your time zone. Welcome. Welcome to this webinar organized by us, the Secretariat of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, and with the institutional help of our chair, Barbados Port Incorporated. Welcome. My name is Jorge Duran, and I am the secretary here at the SIP. And today we are addressing a most important and relevant topic, which is strategies for risk management and emergency response. This is a topic that is never out of fashion, that it is always and continuously changing as threats change, as technology changes, as infrastructure gets replaced or upgraded. We must always have this the thing about resiliency and secure port operations in our foremind, and this is why they are critical things, because we can go from physical threats and environmental hazards to emerging cyber risks. And ports across the region must be able to anticipate, prepare, respond adequately to, and then recover from any disruption, while at the same time maintaining a high degree of safety. And this goes from major infrastructure being damaged by hurricane winds and flooding, for instance, to the cyber part and criminals wanting to take advantage of these situations. And what we here try to do is to recover, to be able to mitigate these risks with appropriate preparation, to be able to respond to these threats appropriately through strategies and some of the things that we will hear today, and to ensure and restore as soon as possible the business continuity. My name is Jorge Duran. I am the Secretary of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, and I welcome you to this webinar on building port resiliency. Again, I want to thank Barbados Port Inc. for their support, Mr. David Jean-Marie, the CEO, and Captain Carl Branch, the Divisional Manager for Innovation and Corporate Services, who we're going to address in a few opening words, have been detained by the Prime Minister. So we gave them a hall pass in this occasion and wish them well with their talks with the Prime Minister. However, we do have Ms. Charmaine Suchan, who is Manager of Internal Audit and Quality Assurance, and who will be in today's event, our wonderful moderator. Charmaine, welcome. We also have Mr. Andrew Baskin, who is the Vice President for Global Policy and Trade at Hudson Analytics, one of our most treasured and oldest associate members. Andrew, as always, welcome. We have today with us Mr. Chevon Ali, Manager of Health, Safety, and Environment at the Port of Spain at the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Ali, welcome to our event. And we have, last but not least, Mr. Gonzalo Mera, who is the Americas Executive Manager for MIS Marine based in the United Kingdom. Gonzalo, hermano, thank you so much for participating. These three speakers, ladies and gentlemen, will give us three different perspectives of the topics I have mentioned before, of security, of resiliency, of preparation, of how to deal with emergencies. We have two private sector companies that specializing in different niches of the port sector, and we have a port authority. So we'll get a full perspective today. I also want to thank the team from the Secretariat, Ms. Monica Blanco, who is responsible for the organization, and our associate partner, Real ID, Mr. Martin Santillanes, Director General, for the support with the technology. Before I turn it to Ms. Charmaine, I wanted to tell you all, because I know you're here to, as am I, to listen to the speakers. So I'm almost done. I just wanted to make everybody aware that we have had quite a successful registration of participants. We have registrations from Argentina, Barbados, Bolivia, Brazil, the Cayman Islands, Colombia, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Greece, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Japan, Mexico, Nigeria, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Welcome to you all to this webinar of the SIP Secretariat. So without further ado, I will now turn it to Ms. Charmaine, not before reminding everybody here that we will put on the chat the link so that you may access the presentations that our speakers are going to give today through the portal, and that at the end of each of these interventions, Ms. Suchan will coordinate a brief Q&A session. So welcome all. Thank you, Mr. Ali. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Gonzalez. And thank you, Charmaine. Your floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Welcome again to everyone to today's webinar on building port resilience. I am, as introduced, Charmaine Suchan, the manager responsible for risk, compliance, and governance at Barbados Port Inc., and I'll be your moderator for this session. We are honored to have three distinguished individuals joining us to discuss innovative strategies, for enhancing port resilience against physical, environmental, and cyber risk. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Andrew Basking is Vice President at Hudson Analytic, a global port and maritime risk management firm. Mr. Baskin leads the firm's port and trade modernization and digitization practice and oversees the firm's engagement in the Americas. In this role, Mr. Baskin advises clients on port and maritime policy and directs projects related to port and trade, advises clients on port and maritime policy and directs projects related to port and trade digitization, legislation and regulation, operations and governance, environmental frameworks, and supply chain security. After joining Hudson, Mr. Baskin held positions at the United States Maritime Administration, where he was responsible for leading the agency's engagement in the Western Hemisphere and Europe. In addition, he served as the U.S. government's representative to the InterAmerican Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, a role in which he chaired the Technical Advisory Committee on Port Security and was a member of the Executive Committee of the SIP. Andrew, please go ahead.
Thank you, Charmaine. I'm going to try to effectively share screen. Already lost. And we just practiced this too. Okay. Charmaine, have I done it effectively or have I messed this up again?
You need to put it in presentation mode because we're seeing your slides on the.
Okay, it's coming up. It should. I just put it in presentation mode. I think the system's thinking. Are you seeing? Are you seeing the presentation? You're seeing. Okay, let's try again. How's that look?
I think it's thinking. We are good to go. Continue.
All right. I apologize for that. Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, everyone. Confirm. My name is indeed Andrew Baskin from Hudson Analytics. Before starting, I want to thank the entire SIP team, Jorge, Mona, Monse, Sawi, and Monica for organizing this webinar, inviting me to participate, and also for all your hard work and everything you do for the SIP. So thank you. Today, we're going to talk about the classic topic of how ports are like boxers. Let's jump right in. So you hear the contents of this presentation. So we'll briefly introduce Hudson and talk about the experience upon which these similarities between ports and boxers are based. We'll jump into a little bit of scene setting context, then talk about the steps both ports and boxers take to respond to and recover from setbacks. And then we'll end, as always, with a comforting conclusion. So here's a very brief introduction of Hudson and what experiences these best practices that we're going to talk about are based on. So we're a port and maritime risk advisory firm. We recently merged with the maritime insurer Shoreline. We're all now part of the big insurance firm Acrisure. Combined, we have presence in 7 countries on 4 continents. And the port and boxer similarities we'll chat about in a minute are based on our experience helping shipping and port clients respond to and manage, among other things, environmental emergencies and disasters, security challenges, and cyber risks. In this vein, we were a contributor to the SIP's Improved Disaster Risk Management for Ports in the Caribbean project. So many of the best practices we'll talk about today are included in the Model Emergency and Disaster Management Plan that you can download from the SIP's website. You can use the QR code to get to the sort of the page on the SIT's website where they have all the information about this project. And you can download this plan and then tailor it to your organization's needs. We're very proud to support the SIP in this engagement. So, all right, that's enough introduction. Ports and boxers. So ports are like boxers, right? Every boxer gets knocked down, and so does every port. Whether it's a natural disaster like a hurricane, an oil spill from a vessel in port's waters, a physical security breach, cyber incident, every port needs to be able to get back off the mat. But first, let's acknowledge the disaster. It's not always easy, and disasters can be expensive, right? There are many examples, and here are 3 that are relevant to all of us. One will touch on natural disasters, one will touch on environmental risks, and yet another on security concerns. So the United Nations Development Program, very relevantly to all of us on this call, has estimated that on average, countries in the Caribbean every year confront damages from storms and other natural disasters that are more or less equivalent to 17% of their GDP. And also, just within the last couple months, there's been an oil spill on the Esmeralda River and its tributaries in Ecuador, and that disaster has affected the lives and living conditions of nearly 500,000 people. And finally, according to that tiny little company, IBM, a data breach costs an industrial organization, of which a port would be one, costs them on average close to 5 million US in damages, right? So these disasters can really affect us in multiple different ways. So with that in mind, what do we do, right? Do we stay on the mat? Do we let the referee call the fight and we go back home bruised and bloodied? No, of course not. We respond, we get off the mat, and we come back better than ever to full operations. And as we know, there are many different types of disasters or emergencies we might face. And our ability to confront these different types, to confront that reality, respond to them, it cannot be one size fits all. Putting this just in some overarching incident, sort of emergency management context, this is typically considered to have 5 phases: prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. There are entire courses dedicated to each individual phase, but what we're going to talk about will be the response phase that you see at the bottom of the screen, and then that transition between response to recovery. So, responding to a disaster emergency, regardless of its type, requires some of the same things, and let's look at 4. So, first, regardless of the threat that we're considering, we need to create a response plan, right? A well-developed emergency management plan is essential. It's essential for responding quickly and effectively when a given type of emergency occurs. The plan should be tailor-made for our organization, right? Not one size fits all. It should outline things like roles, responsibilities, procedures, establish performance requirements so we know how effectively we need to respond to specific emergencies. Um, a well-developed plan also facilitates coordination with external agencies, right? And external stakeholders generally. It ensures that we're communicating the right information with the right people, the right organizations and right people at the right time. Ultimately, what these plans do is provide a framework. They provide a framework for managing incidents, preventing further damage, hopefully, and then ensuring business continuity, ensuring that we can get back on our feet and back to operations. But every plan looks great on paper, but to quote the boxer and philosopher Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's to say, we need to be able to adapt our plans. We need to be able to adapt them as circumstances change. So we need our plans to be flexible and adaptable to any type of changing circumstance. So, in addition to a plan, we need a team, right? Boxers have a team called their corner. They'll have a trainer, a cut man, various assistants. And in our plans, we need to do the same thing. We need to identify our team that will respond to a given type of emergency or disaster. Excuse me. We need to clearly identify who has which responsibilities to do what in the event of that certain type of emergency or disaster. And importantly, this should include who has the responsibility to make certain decisions, because every second counts, and we want to make those decisions crisply and effectively. This identifying a team or assembling a team should also identify backups. It should identify backups in case members of a team are unavailable at an inopportune moment, right? When emergency strikes. And of course, all the team members should know each other, right? They should train together, which we'll get to in a minute. All this before an emergency occurs. This seems basic, but we've seen situations we want to avoid where everyone is shaking hands and handing out business cards while oil pours into the water from a vessel, right? It's less than ideal. So an internal team is important, without a doubt. But just like a boxer who travels with his or her entourage, every team can use a little bit of outside help. External resources can be essential to this type of response, particularly when local capabilities are overwhelmed, right? External resources can provide specialized equipment. They can provide specialized expertise, specialized personnel that may not be readily available within a port, or that may not make sense for a port to have, right? If a port knows it faces a certain type of emergency on average every 2 to 3 years, it may not make sense to have as a full-time employee someone with a certain set of expertise. It may make more sense to engage them as an external resource when necessary, right? And this type of engagement can include collaboration with external agencies like Coast Guards. It can include environmental responders, logistics providers, logistics partners too, groups like that. Examples could be perhaps in the event of an oil spill, having an arrangement with an oil spill response organization, maybe having a technical cyber specialist available in the case of a cyber incident, or even outside counsel or a specialized communications firm in the case of just about any type of incident. The important thing, though, is to identify those resources before the emergency or disaster happens, and to have a structure in place, some sort of agreement and some sort of way to call on these resources quickly when the time comes. Right? We don't want to be Googling for a company that is really good at cyber forensics, as hackers are holding our data ransom. Right? And of course, every port, like every boxer, needs to train, right? Every organization should practice its emergency response plans. We should test our plans regularly with drills and with exercise. In the security context, this can be easily done under the umbrella of our ISPS code drills, right? Which are drills and exercises that we already do. In environmental matters, this might be in the context of MARPOL specific training that many of us do. Right, this is just to demonstrate and illustrate that we have a lot of these structures already in place. It's just a matter of using them as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And importantly, ensuring that we're training to our plans as written, and then adjusting our plans based on lessons learned from the training. If during our drills and exercises, sort of another practice, if there's weaknesses we identify or areas where we think we can do better, it's important to go back and modify our plans to reflect that. And all of what we just discussed here is part of the response stage. But the response stage, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in the context of that overall emergency management sort of rubric. And the intent of the response stage is to help us get to the recovery stage, right? Which in the port context is vital, particularly in jurisdictions that may just have one port. Having the port back up and running is critical for resuming trade and supply chain operations. And this transition then from response to recovery involves stabilizing the situation and then focusing on rebuilding and restoring the affected area, either to a pre-disaster state, if possible, or perhaps a new normal, depending on the impact of the emergency in question. Regardless, this is not a one-day activity. This is a long-term process. It involves addressing physical aspects, environmental aspects, economic aspects, social aspects, but a well-planned sort of response process that gets us to a well-planned recovery process really helps strengthen a port's resilience. And it helps us kind of get to that recovery stage and get to operation or normal or as close to normal as possible operations as quickly as possible. So here we are, we're 11 minutes in with lots of information to absorb. So let's sum up with an at least semi-comforting conclusion. So first, like any boxer who gets knocked down, a port needs to be able to get back off the mat. And doing that requires a plan. So regardless of the type of emergency or disaster in question, the plan should detail roles, it should detail responsibilities, it should detail procedures, and it should be flexible and adaptable to changing circumstances. Next, every boxer needs a good team, and so does every port. We should know who has what responsibilities in the event of emergency, who is empowered to make decisions in the event of that emergency, and who the backups are for the team members, just in case Jim from IT is at the beach when disaster strikes. Next, every boxer has an entourage. And for a port responding to an emergency, an entourage is a good thing. External resources like government agencies, environmental responders, logistics providers, technical experts, they can all be a godsend in the midst of an emergency response. Fourth, every boxer trains before a bout, and every port should practice its various emergency response plans before an emergency happens. We have a wonderful set of already existing exercises and drills for security and environmental response. And those are great opportunities to practice our plans and modify those plans then based on lessons learned. And finally, all of this is with the goal of reaching the recovery stage as we do what needs to be done to get back off the mat and return to normal operations. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you to the SIP, the invitation to present on this webinar. I'm looking forward to Siobhan and Gonzalo's presentations. Please feel free to use QR code to connect on LinkedIn. And finally, I welcome any easy questions that you might have during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that insightful presentation. I really love your analogy of the boxer being associated with ports. It was great. Next, we'll hear from Siobhan Ali, who has over 18 years of progressive leadership experience in health, safety, security, and environmental management. Siobhan is a strategic and results-driven HSSE leader with a proven track record for advancing safety, compliance, and sustainability across diverse industries, including maritime, government, logistics, energy, and construction. Currently serving as the HSE manager at the Port of Spain, Siobhan provides strategic oversight for HSSE systems, risk assessments, regulatory compliance, and decarbonization initiatives, leading cross-functional teams that drive operational excellence and organizational resilience. A former lieutenant with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force and chief inspector with the National Occupational Safety and Health Authority, Siobhan directed national-level investigations and policy development to reduce national accident levels. Very impressive. Siobhan, please proceed.
Thank you, Charmaine. Charmaine, can you see the presentation?
I can see it, but you need to put it in presentation mode.
I think
We're seeing the slides on the side.
Are we there yet?
You're good to go. Proceed.
So thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share PATT's perspective on building a resilient port. To better explain this, we're going to touch on a few areas. Primarily, going to look at the Port Authority as an organization, what port resilience means to us, the key elements of port resilience, our strategy for risk management, emergency response strategies, leveraging technology, and our culture of resilience. So the Port Authority was established by the Port Authority Act in 1961 and has a direct responsibility for the two major ports in Trinidad and Tobago, that being the Port of Port of Spain and the Port of Scarborough in Tobago. And this is important for us in terms of resilience because we first had to understand what our operations were. And for the Port of Port of Spain, we are the main cargo and container handling part of the operation, which is our first strategic business unit. Secondly, we have the Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Transportation Company, which is our ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago and is responsible for taking persons and equipment and goods back and forth from the Port of Port of Spain to the Port of Scarborough, which is on average about 80 nautical miles. And thirdly, we have the Port of Spain Infrastructural Company, which is responsible primarily for all of our infrastructural needs and modernization of our port facilities. So the first step for us was actually defining what port resilience meant to us. And we came up with the 3 R's. For our port systems, we needed a system that would help us to resist, respond, and recover from any disruptive events. And we had to do so efficiently. Secondly, we wanted to have something in place that help us understand the importance of being resilient on a global level. And we all know from the statistics that in trade, 80% of all goods are moved through ports throughout the world. Secondly, on a more national perspective, we try to understand how the resilience or absence of that would affect our economy. And most importantly, we looked at the safety of our personnel and the environment in us achieving resilience. In an effort to become more resilient, we identified key elements for our operations. The first of that was risk assessment and risk mitigation. Secondly, we looked at implementing redundancies into our operations and increasing the level of flexibility. Thirdly, and perhaps one of the most important elements, was developing a strong system of governance. And we actually included that in our strategic plan. We implemented a system of ESG, as well as we aligned our governance system to the UN model so that we actually have 8 pillars to ensure that we have good governance throughout our operations. Most importantly for me is the training and capacity building, because no matter how much time, effort, or money you spend into the development of plans, without having competent persons to actually implement those plans, you're doomed to failure. We also looked at emergency response and business continuity planning for several reasons. And we also looked at meeting our legal compliance, as that is also part of maintaining a strong system of governance by maintaining, achieving a rule of law. So for the Port of Port of Spain and the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, we identified that having a risk management framework was critical to us being resilient. And to achieve that, we looked at several comparable operations across the world, as well as we would have looked at several disruptive events throughout history and current events as well. So some of those events would have been events like Piper Alpha in 1984. We also looked at the Fukushima event. We looked at Flixborough 1974. And closer to home, we also looked at the Paria tragedy of 2022. And we try to extract all of the lessons learned that we could get from those disruptive events. In doing so, we came up with our PATT risk management framework. And these consist of 4 phases. The first and the most important phase is actually the risk identification. And then once we do that, we document the risk and any related events. The second element would be our risk analysis, where we assess and measure risk using criteria that includes impact and likelihood, and the risks are then ranked and prioritized. Thirdly, we looked at risk controls. Controls are implemented to eliminate or mitigate identified risk. And the fourth step is our monitoring, auditing, and review of our entire risk management framework. And this is done to ensure that our controls are relevant and are effective in controlling any identified risk report. So for step 1, we looked at the data and we looked at current global trends, as well as information from comparable ports. And what we came up with was 3 major categories. So we looked at natural hazards, for example, storm surges, hurricanes, and earthquakes. The second category was any risks that were born out of man-made activities, which would be fires, oil spills, terrorism, and cyber attacks. And thirdly, we looked at the operational risks to our operations, which would be equipment failure, human error, and labor disputes. Once those risks were identified, we had to find a way to evaluate and prioritize those risks. And we used, based on the data that we gathered, we took a semi-quantitative approach to risk assessment. And that helped us define what risk meant to us. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have an equation that says risk for us is equal to the consequence times the likelihood of that risk occurring. And on the right-hand side, we have our 5x5 matrix that helps us to categorize our risk. To the bottom, you'll see a table of risk rating and the actions that would be associated with the different risk levels. At this point, we came up to our first roadblock. How do we as an organization define the severity of risk to us, or what the frequency of those risks are? And we looked across several jurisdictions. And again, we looked at the comparable operations from similar organizations throughout the world. And we came up with the consequence matrix, right? So for us and our operations, and based on the resources that we have and the various types of operations that occur within PATT's jurisdiction, we came up with this matrix to help us define what the consequence means to us, right? So for most organizations, we found that they would have one column that defines what the consequence is, but based on the various activities that we have going on at the Port of Port of Spain, the ferry service, as well as for Cinco, we came up with several areas, several criteria to help us define it. So the first of which would be health and safety issues. Secondly, we looked at environmental impact. And because we are an ISPS compliant port, we looked at various disruptions that can happen on the port, including cyber security attacks. After that, we looked at different methods for determining what the frequency of those identified risks were. And again, we looked at several models, and the model that best suited us for our operation was a model born out of the US. And we used that in combination with our internal data for accidents, and we came up with this probability ranking. So you can see for events that are improbable, that would be a range between 10 to the power 4 to 10 to the power 5. Whereas on the other end of the scale, for likely occurrences or frequently occurring risk or events, we would have a probability of occurring at least once per year. This information is then added to our equation for risk calculation, and the risks are then prioritized according to our previous risk matrix, as you can see on the right-hand side. Once those risks are identified and prioritized, we found out that we needed a way to control those risks. And again, we looked at several models, both locally and internationally. And the model that best worked for us was the hierarchy of control. So there's 5 steps to controlling risk. based on our resources and the training of our people, was best suited for our type of operation. At the start of our process to become resilient, we realized that there was a heavy reliance on PPE. And as we implemented our systems, we moved away from just that heavy reliance to added different layers of protection for the organization, thereby helping us to become more resilient. Once those processes were implemented, we didn't stop there. We actually started a process of monitoring, auditing, and reviewing all of the implemented processes to ensure that, again, the controls were relevant to the risks identified. And as those risks changed, because we also kept an eye on global events to ensure that the risks that we would have identified initially are still current and relevant to our operations. Second major factor for us becoming and maintaining resilience as a port was developing a robust emergency response strategy for the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. And to achieve that, we looked at data from similar companies as well as other major hazard industries throughout the world. And what we came up with was an emergency management cycle that was fit for our operations. And that cycle actually had 4 main phases, which is preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery. At the preparedness phase, it was heavily dependent on the training that we would give to our people, continuous cycle of planning, organizing, exercising, evaluating, and deciding on corrective actions. And the tool that was most helpful to us at this phase was the CIP model for emergency and disaster management. That tool was a very logical and prescriptive document that helped us as an organization prepare for any impending emergency. Secondly, we went to our response phase. And in this phase, it determined what reaction we would have to any disaster or emergency. And the tool that was best fitted for this phase was implementing an incident command system. We then went on to the mitigation phase. And in this phase, we wanted to find ways to mitigate losses to the organization. And tools that we used to help us achieve this were training, leveraging technology, and stakeholder engagement. The fourth and final phase was the recovery phase. And to achieve this, we understood that we had to implement and measure several metrics, including recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives. Additionally, we added a layer of defense for our emergency response, which was the business continuity planning phase. And this consisted of 6 key elements, which was to define critical success factors, identify and analyze any risk, develop strategies, develop contingency plans. Also, once we have developed those plans, we needed to drill and exercise those plans. And for that, we used the APEC manual to guide our drills and exercises. Most importantly in this process was the ERP and business continuity communication. The development of the plans would not be as successful without communicating it to our employees and our stakeholders. Next was the development of our emergency response process flow. And that had 3 phases: our process prioritization, secondly, our process implementation, and thirdly, our ERP management. And in the prioritization phase, as we alluded to before, we assess risk, we analyze the impact on business, and we had a business continuity program assessment, right? The convenient example in terms of cybersecurity would be developing IT strategies and design for our operations. And that led to developing the RTOs, as I said before, and the RPOs, which led to realistic recovery times for our operation, which ultimately led to our resilience as an organization. As Andrew indicated, it was very important for us to develop our incident response teams. And for that, again, we leaned on the incident command system coming out of the US and FEMA. And our responsibilities were assigned and decisions were made at the incident commander level. And those were also Those were also drawn down to various section chiefs, which are our up section chief, logistics section chief, finance section chief, and planning section chief. And as alluded to before in the previous presentation, we had a level of redundancy in terms of leaders, where we had deputy team leaders and various other team members. Documentation for us was a key part of our emergency response. And these are just some examples of the various types of documentations that we would have included in our emergency response management system. So we looked at what plans we would need and resources that would be necessary for various types of incidents, where our emergency response centers were located and where our redundant systems were. Documentation including the CIP model, as I mentioned before, various contacts lists for employees and stakeholders, business impact and risk analysis information, risk task list, and supplier contact information. One of the key things for us and one of the key lessons learned after analyzing all the various information that we would have gathered from globally from comparable organizations and other major hazard industries would have been leveraging technology to help us become more resilient. And for us, we looked at the use of drones, AI, IoT for real-time emergency, leveraging geographical information systems, digital simulations for training, making sure that our cyber security infrastructure is robust, various digital tools for health, safety, and security, GPS for equipment operation and maintenance, and climate monitoring. One of the most crucial elements would have been the human element. As I said before, no matter how much time, money, or effort went into the development of plans, if we didn't have competent people to execute them, we would then be dealing with two disasters, right? And we realized for our organization, leadership commitment and policy support was one of the most critical assets. Secondly, we looked at the continuous training and development of our employees. Thirdly, collaboration with various stakeholders, as Andrew would have mentioned before, and we do work with the Coast Guard, our local police and fire service. Performance review, because if it's not measured, it's not managed. So we keep track of all of our various metrics to ensure that what we are doing is very effective. So for us, one of the major lessons learned would have been the need to invest in various infrastructure and technology, establish robust and adaptive ERPs, fostering a multi-agency and stakeholder collaboration. Because for us, being resilient doesn't mean doing it on your own. And in the military, there's a saying, one is none, right? So we understood that there's a need for us to collaborate with our various stakeholders to ensure the resilience of our organization. And as always, for all systems, we need to ensure there is continuous improvement. So this is just a brief graphic to show where we were as compared to where we are now. At the start of the process, we were unable to access critical information, and as an organization, that can be seen as being unprepared. And we move via, as you can see on the right-hand side, by using the plan, do, check, act approach, or the Deming cycle, all the way to achieving organizational flexibility, responsiveness, and awareness in daily operations, right? By filling some of those gaps that we have mentioned on the left-hand side. Thank you for your time and attention. And I will now hand you back over to Charmaine.
Thank you, Siobhan. Your presentation was very interesting. I almost lost track of time myself. I was there like, okay, he needs to continue. He needs to continue. Very, very good presentation. Finally, I'd like to welcome Gonzalo Mira. Gonzalo began his maritime career at sea, rising through the ranks from cadet to captain aboard a wide variety of merchant vessels. He later transitioned to shore-based roles, working in terminal operations and planning, eventually serving as terminal manager at the port of La Plata for YPF. There, Gonzalo spearheaded the creation of the Marine Assurance Department, establishing it from the ground up. In this role, he led both the vetting department and the oil spill response team. His expertise and leadership earned him international recognition, including contributions to organizations such as OCIMF, where he was named regional champion for South and Central America and served as chairman of the Maritime Security Committee, among other key roles. Today, Gonzalo is the Americas Executive Manager for MIS Marine and also serves as Vice President of the Latin American Society of Maritime Oil Terminals and SBMs. Gonzalo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jermaine. Thanks to Jorge, Monica, and the whole CAP team, and also for all people that is here with us. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
I am seeing, oh, yes, you're in presentation mode. Proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about risk management and basically about the different ways to optimize the ship-shore interface to mitigate risk at terminals. I will start with a short explanation about the risk matrix that was already mentioned in the previous presentation. If we make an analysis about the basic risk management formula, I like to divide the likelihood into probability and exposure. And I will explain why. The probability is virtually a static number. It is usually represented by the number of repetitions of a specific event or incident in a specific period of time. For example, in a channel, in a navigational channel, the probability of a collision has a specific number, the number of occurrence of this kind of incidents. The consequences are also static values, so professionals can determine the potential impacts from the worst case scenario that are being assessed. For example, the consequence of a collision could be an oil spill, people injured, sink vessel, etc. But the level of exposure change depending on the actions we take or we don't take. It means that risk management is about how to limit the exposure to the different risks. So if we go to an example of hazard, and for risk management, we always start identifying hazards. Once the hazard is identified and the risk is analyzed, we have to take actions for this in likelihood, the probability for the exposure, as well say the probability, as we say, the probability is static. That's why we should take actions to limit the exposure. So we can see in this picture, we have a shark. So we can assess, for example, one risk based on if the shark is gonna bite me or not. In the first picture, we can see that this risk is very low. In the second picture, we can see that it's a medium risk, or the exposure is a medium risk. And in the third one is very, very high. The actions to be taken by the level to be taken are normally based on the level of effectiveness. And there is a list. We can eliminate the risk, we can substitute the risk. If we can do that, we can add engineering controls, administrative controls, or at the end, the personal protective equipments. So the component that poses the highest risk dictates the overall risk level. When you dock a ship considered to have a high risk level, the risk associated with your ship-shore interface will also be classified as high. High-level risk remain true even if your terminal has implemented strong safety measures and effective risk mitigation strategies in your site. A high risk level, a terminal with low risk level, the ship-shore interface will still have a high risk level. So let's define the interface. The dictionary says that the interface is the point at which independent and often unrelated systems meet and act or communicate with each other. Evaluating risk level of this interface is essential for guaranteeing the safety and efficiency for maritime operations. It's important to highlight that the ship-shore interface starts in some cases a couple of months before the vessel is alongside. The interface is about all the coordination dynamics between the vessel and the shore facility. Ensuring that all procedures and protocols are meticulously aligned is vital for fostering a seamless interaction, identifying potential vulnerabilities, and implementing corrective measures to be taken for reduce the risk of miscommunication or operational mishaps. So when we talk about ship-shore interface, we are talking about the interaction and the communication that occurs between what I like to call the terminal system and the vessel system, based on the interface definition. We can see that each system is composed by three main elements. We have the hardware. It means the vessel and its equipment, and the terminal and its equipment as well. The software, basically the safety management system, and the human factor that also was mentioned before. Clearly, the individual performance of the terminal or the vessel is determined by the effectiveness of the interaction between the three elements of each system, right? The basic constitution of a ship-shore interface is usually being done by linking the vessel and its equipment with the terminal and its equipment, for example, defining the type of equipment of each system that will be used during cargo operations, the crew and the terminal operators, taking in consideration the human factor that may affect the operations. So basically how the crew and the terminal people will interact and communicate, and the SMS using, for example, cross-checks or communication or communicating how to act in case of incidents. So we can see that basic ship-shore integration, it's about a linear integration of the counter element of each system. For port and terminals, we can adopt a detailed vetting process, which is vital for enhancing understanding of the vessel condition, a comprehensive evaluation of how each element of the ship-shore interface interact with and affects all the other is essential, particularly in modern maritime operations. Developing vetting criteria that reflects your risk appetite and operational philosophy is crucial in effectively managing potential risk. So vetting is crucial in terminals. Operational safety and efficiency, especially regarding ship-shore interface. Furthermore, effective vetting influences the seamless interaction between the ship and the terminal. It establishes trust and enhances communications, enabling a smoother loading and unloading process. When terminals are confident in the vessel they do business with, they can allocate resources in a more efficient manner, reducing delays and improving overall operational flows. In summary, vetting significantly impacting shore-ship interface by ensuring that only compliant vessels can access terminal. It enhances safety, fosters operational efficiency, and promotes positive relationship between all parties. Marine assurance and vetting are disciplines that ensure that all vessels meet specific safety, environmental, and operational criteria set by the organization that initiate the screening. Vetting can involve inspections, audits, and assessment to verify that a vessel fits its intent proposed and complies with relevant regulations and industry standards. Performing marine terminal safety and operational vetting helps to protect your investment, improve customer relationship, and ensure safer, greener, and more efficient cargo handling. But what are digital tools need for port safety? As we know, the complexity in ports operational is at an ever-increasing and demanding condition. So the volumes of cargo are increasing, the traffic is also increasing, and it demands to create more efficiencies to allocate all the operations expect. We need to manage the risk proactively. We need to ensure the business continuity and compliance at the same time with global safety and environmental standards such as the ISPS and the new IMO guidelines regarding the GHGs. We know that the amount of information that we have to handle, it's very vast, and we have to take hands-on. It's almost impossible for people to manage all this information at our own. And the current gaps in safety and compliance. We know that manual process and irregular safety checks can create vulnerabilities, exposing ports to safety and compliance risk. So digital tools brings the opportunity to obtain the right balance between safety, sustainability, and efficiency, a key factor in port management. By being efficient, we reduce the time of vessel at port. It means that the level of exposure itself is reduced in time, and at the same time, we are reducing the energy consumption. So being more efficient operationally has a positive effect in safety and sustainability. And the introduction of digital tools open new windows of opportunities for improving the terminal performance. So thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.
Okay.
I did it fast.
Yes, you did. That's no worries. Well, we've heard some excellent presentations on various aspects of disaster risk management and port resilience. And now we'll be moving into our question and answer session. So if everyone can turn back on their cameras. So, Andrew, since you were first, I'm going to ask you the first question. So cyber risks are becoming an increasing issue for ports, as we all know. So what recommendations do you have for ports trying to create a cyber response plan?
Ooh, thank you. That's a good question. I thought I'd asked for easy ones, but I guess that was ignored. So first, I guess, follow every single word I said during the presentation. Then second, let's mention two additional considerations, I think, to keep in mind that maybe didn't touch on quite as much. First of all, is in the cyber context to take note of the escalation and notification requirements. Some jurisdictions require that you notify specific government entities, such as your designated authority, or maybe a CSIRT, a computer security incident response team, when a specific type of cyber event or incident occurs. So I think it's important to take note of those, include that in your plan, and follow those to a T, as we say, so you avoid any compliance-related problems in that regard. Second, I would say that technical external resources are very important to have on hand, or at least to have on standby and sort of readily available. I was only half joking about Googling cyber forensic specialists while your systems are under ransom. We have a technical partner. Our cyber division has a technical partner who received just a call a couple of years ago from a then to-be client who was seeking very technical help while they were under attack. So it's important to have those external partners under agreement and have them ready to go when disaster strikes, because every second really does count. So I think those are the two things that I would sort of take most note of: is be aware of escalation notification requirements to government agencies, and then have those technical folks, external technical folks, ready to go, or at least know how you're going to contact them and put them to work right away.
Definitely agree. You need to have your capacity built before something happens. Siobhan, you're going to have the next question. How does the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago leverage technology to build port resilience, emergency response?
Excellent question. So for us, we looked at revamping some of our systems. For example, our alarm systems. We actually in the process of revising our alarm systems for our buildings to ensure that all of our buildings can communicate with each other in the event of an emergency, as well as we want to include IoT in our systems so that we could identify elements such as how many people are in a building and what areas of a building they are in the event that we need to respond in an emergency. For our operational aspect, as I said, for one of our business units, we look at cargo handling and container handling. So we looked at the implementing in-vehicle management systems for our vehicles so that we can identify fatigue levels for operators, as well as determine speed limits, braking, cornering, stuff like that for our operations. For a port, the weather is absolutely important. And we're looking at third parties to provide critical weather information so that we can better plan our operations. Finally, we look at planning for our yards because we do handle a lot of dangerous goods. So the segregation of those dangerous goods is very important. And we also look at what type of mitigation and control measures we can implement for the various types of dangerous goods that we can handle. So the software that will actually manage systems like that is critical for our operations and us being a more resilient port.
Thank you for that. That was very insightful. Gonzalo, how do you think digital tools can support decision makers at terminals for improving safety and operational efficiencies?
Well, very good question. So basically, I think a key element of digital tools is the ability to gather and process a vast amount of information in seconds, obtaining the right necessary information to take decisions. And we can split this in 3 different moments if we are focused on operations. So digital tools are able to create predictive models. So if you are planning an operation, it can bring information to improve the ongoing or the upcoming operations. They can also be prescriptive. So if you have an ongoing operation and something happened, the systems will be able to alert about this, and also through models make a recalibration of your plans and brings you different alternatives to reach the different outcomes. And then the descriptive mode, when it's the ability to gather the outcomes of all the operations, that it's essential information normally used by managers for take decisions in the future. So it works in different levels. So from the operational planning perspective, from the operational perspective, and also for the high-level decision makers.
So then, would you recommend a standard or a tailored system?
It's a very hard question. I would say that it depends on the complexity of the system and the outcomes you are looking for. Normally, all organizations are looking for cost-effective investment. So it's not, so normally a port has the ability to have a IT team as robust as some other companies that are dedicated for the development of systems. So from my perspective, the best option is to choose systems that have proven their ability to fulfill the expectations of the organizations. But at the same time, organizations should assess the level of or the degree of configuration for tailoring the different functionalities and outcomes to fulfill their own expectations. So it's an open question, answer.
Yeah. So, Andrew, my next question for you. What is the difference between an emergency management response plan and a business continuity plan?
Oh, that's a good question too. Okay, so they're definitely closely related. They often work together, but they do serve different purposes, and they focus on different aspects of how we respond. To put it, we'll go back to putting it in, in Mike Tyson terms. The emergency management response plan is how you stand back up after you get punched in the mouth. The business continuity plan is how you begin to fight again after that, right? The emergency response plan, it's immediate actions. You protect people, you protect property during the emergency. The business continuity plan is maintaining those core operations during and after the disruption. So we can think of it as the emergency management response plan is reactive, it's immediate, and the business continuity plan is more proactive and aimed at sort of sustaining operations.
Thanks for that. Very good. So, Siobhan, how does the Port of Trinidad and Tobago build a culture of resilience?
For us, it starts with our leadership. We lead by example. Secondly, the training and development of our people, as you would have seen in the presentation. The most critical factor for us is the human element and constant communication with our employees about our risk management information, as well as the SOPs that we would have developed for our emergency response planning. So between those three elements, we think that is suitable. It's really the recipe for us in the development of our resilience culture.
Yes, I think it's very important that everybody know that you're going in the same direction, or you can have issues.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, we've come to the end of our question and answer session. So, Jorge, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Charmaine, and thank you to our three speakers. I think that they were all fantastic. Andrew, very much enjoyed your boxing analogies with Mike Tyson, but I liked especially the difference between the recovery and business resiliency. I think that was highly well illustrated. Obviously, this is the perspective that we all need to have, because we're all going to get hit. We're all going to get, whether it's a natural disaster, a man-made, a cyber incident. At some point, our industries are going to get hit. We need to know that coming into this game, coming in, and from there we need to get up. Thank you very much, Siobhan. I am very impressed with the robust plan that the Port Authority has enacted. Seriously, from backing all the files up to having a comprehensive integral strategy of preparation, of response, of recovery and mitigation. Really, congratulations. It was very enlightening and very well put. I also have to emphasize your focus on capacity building, on training. I am also of the idea that all this technology, which the three of you spoke about, digital solutions, and just before I get to Gonzalo, but the training, Siobhan, I think this is why here at the Secretariat, our most important task is capacity building, is training to build institutional capacities and human capacity. So thank you very much. And that brings me to Gonzalo, who talked about the interface and this being, I think, with so many moving pieces. And like you said, they're two different systems trying to talk to one another. And here again, I think the training of the personnel, both the vessel crew and the port personnel, the training comes into being a very, very important element. The three of you spoke about the digital thing. So digitizing and digital tools, both in the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, and Gonzalo mentioned it as well. And of course, Andrew, cautions them to, yes, it is a more efficient system. Yes, you avoid human mistakes and sorts of it, but careful, because you open yourself to a whole new game in things. So we have also on the, and thank you for mentioning, Siobhan, the model emergency operation plan that we have on our portal, and they did a wonderful job in going out there and seeing what has happened and learned Trinidad and Tobago from previous experiences of other ports that had experienced some sort of thing. So thank you. But we put the link on the chat for all of those who would like to take a look at it. It is really made for you to fill in the blanks and adapt to your situation, like Andrew said. And I've also put up there, because you were speaking about risks, different types of risks, Gonzalo. So I put also the risk analysis matrix, which is available in English and Spanish for you too, like the Port Authority and Gonzalo told us about, you have to measure the risk. What is the statistical probability that something will happen? And if it does happen, what is the impact on my operations? And then how prepared am I to fix that and to address that? So this matrix is but it includes like 10 already made threads, but it's open for you to put in your threats, your specific threats of your community, of your port, of your region, and assign them different statistical probabilities so that you get an index for you. So it's a tool that is tailored for you. And then Charmaine, thank you so much for moderating. As always, this is what we try and do here. And again, thank you to Barbados for your support, and Real ID for the technological, and Monica Blanco for setting everything up. So before we go, gentlemen, I'm going to give the floor to Charmaine, Andrew, Siobhan, and Gonzalo to just give us a goodbye message, and thank you for your participation. So Charmaine.
Thank you, Jorge. I'd just like to say thank you to the speakers and the engaged audience for this insightful discussion. And I just want to add, and I think you reiterated it, it is clear that building resilience is not a one-time effort, but an ongoing commitment to adaptation and collaboration. I'd like to thank the Secretariat of the Inter-American Committee on Ports for organizing this timely and important discussion. And I hope to see you all at future events. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe.
Andrew, a few words.
Oh, all of us.
Yes.
Everything Charmaine said, and thank you to the SIP for all of your hard work, not just organizing this webinar, but for everything you do for the port sector in our region. So thank you to all of you, and really thank everyone for their time, and hope everyone has a wonderful, resilient day.
Siobhan.
Hi. On behalf of the Port Authority, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our perspective on building a resilient port.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Gonzalo?
Yeah, well, thank you as well. Collaboration is a key element for the development, and this is a true, or it's an evidence that collaboration works and make us better. So I'm honored to be here. I'm glad to be contributing to CIP and with all the other colleagues in the future. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And I thank the speakers for their time and their expertise and donating it for the SIP community in the Americas. Thank you so much for your interest and participation. And as you know, we will continue our webinar series. So be on the lookout for the next invitation to our next event. In the meantime, take care, be resilient, and we'll see you later. Thank you.